Hey, welcome everybody to Talking Niagara. It's Tuesday, February 18th, and I hope you had a good family day, everybody. What about you, Dave?
Yeah, it was okay. Yeah, I had a not a bad weekend. Well, Monday I was just got stuck in the
Shuck.
snow and had to shovel out, and
Yeah,
then went on
I,
my
I was
bingo.
going to say they did a particularly, it was like that was probably the worst weekend we've had in a few years, right?
Yeah, for a long. Yeah, I was glad I wasn't had to go off to work or anything. And our new contractor that plows our lot here only did it in yesterday afternoon. So all that time. I had to dig my way out on Monday
Yeah.
morning.
Well, interesting. The interesting thing about this is that I had to go in. I had to go into work yesterday because we had an alarm fitted by Tellus, and I did when they arranged the time. They basically nobody thought about the fact that it was Family Day holiday, and of course, Tellus being a federal organisation, work on Family Day.
Yeah, Family Day was. Yeah, they don't get it. Yeah,
And the interesting thing is that one of the calls we had yesterday was from the CRA, and was talking to them about Family Day. She says, "Yeah, I'm in Ontario, but I don't get it."
yeah, yeah. Any federal employees, posties shouldn't be getting it either.
No,
They were probably hard pressed to meet to do their
they
route.
probably there. It was probably tough for them to be able to get out. I haven't even managed to clear the postie area yet.
Yeah, I can't. Even though I'm on Thorlstone Road and there's a sidewalk plow that comes up and down, it still couldn't have helped too
Yeah,
much.
yeah,
The posties. So
yeah. Well, and anyway, yeah. So yeah, it's the way it is. But hey, it's got to have been. It's not that actually individually the worst thing about this. So when I went yesterday to work, I cleared the snow off the top of the car, except what happened is I clear about this much snow off the top of the car, 6 to 8 inches of snow off the top of the car. But there's actually a thin layer that is firmly stuck to the car and isn't moving,
yeah.
both on the hood and on the roof.
Yeah, I know. I after I drove around, I went and I parked, and a big lump of ice came off my roof and sat right. Of course, it didn't go on the driver's side. It went right in the passenger side. It went right in the driver's side.
Yeah,
A big lump of ice and snow slid off the top of my roof.
yeah. Well, my car's going into the shop today, so don't have to worry about it. We'll get, and when I got to work, I had to go find an unusual place to park because I just had to. What I did was there's snows there, but because my car's slightly better than, with winter snow, I just crushed down the snow, rocked it back, and went into a place, moved it back and forth about 6 or 8 foot, and flattened it out a little bit. It's all you can really do, right?
That's all. You got well, that's winter driving. That's
Yeah,
what it is.
that is what you do, right? Okay. Plane crash at Pearson yesterday. Oh my God. Right. Well, okay. So I've never heard of a commercial airliner, a commercial passenger jet flipping on landing. But when I see where all the pictures are about where it's landing, it's on an icy patch of runway. I'm wondering whether what we ended up here was a pilot turning too quickly in, when it was going still going too fast. I don't know how it would whip out because planes don't crash in 30-kilometer winds being flown at them at odd angles.
Yeah, to have a plane flipped on its back is very rare. It happens,
Rare,
but it's
yes.
very,
So
very rare.
there's a CNN safety analyst and former FAA worker, David Succi, who said that this sort of thing doesn't happen very often. That there was a DC-9 flipped over in Denver that killed 28 people in 1987. So it's rare. That's how rare it is.
Yeah, it basically this particular aircraft was a Canadian-made Bombardier aircraft.
Yeah.
And a related aircraft was involved in the helicopter crash in Washington. That plane that was hit was also a Bombardier plane. But these particular aircraft are very good in bad weather, apparently, and their pilots are trained for it. So it's going to be interesting to find out what exactly.
We won't know for months as to what actually went wrong. Maybe not even for 2 or 3 years. Right. But the thing about it is they will have the black box voice recorders available, so those things wouldn't have gotten lost in the ocean.
Yeah,
they're already in the lab, right?
Yeah. So there were stiff winds.
Yeah.
It says here stiff winds over Canada's Toronto Pearson Airport afternoon as a slim aircraft cleared controlled and landed there and then drifted towards the snowy tarmac. Within minutes, the Bombardier CRJ 900 crashed in the runway, overturned, sending its crew scrambling to extinguish the flames.
It says,
went on a flight. This is like 18 people were injured. I think 2 or 3, including a child, I think, was injured badly. They had to be helicoptered out. But all in all, for a crash like that and a fire that started and it being upside down and everybody hanging upside down on the plane, they were able to get everybody out of there. And so it's not a bad result, actually.
Yeah, I'm just stunned,
I mean, and the people were coming out with their baggage, and that's what I would like. They weren't even coming out, but they were coming out with their baggage.
Yeah,
like bringing their hand carries out with them.
Yeah, and that's probably the wisest thing to do. Even if you're upside down on the roof, you can still, once you right yourself up, you can deal with that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah, well, it told me that there must have been a sense of urgency, but if people are stopping to grab their hand carries, when the Air France jet crashed, I don't know, about 20 years ago or more, I mean, they got out of there with only seconds before the whole thing got turned into flames, and then what they were doing was they're passing the kids over top of their heads to make sure they got out faster than the people in line.
Yeah.
Everybody it was the stewardesses that saved everybody's life there, because the stewardesses ignored the captain's orders. The captain's orders was to everyone sit still and stay calm. He didn't realize that the plane had already caught on fire. It was a stewardess that just went ahead and started opening doors and ferrying people out. Yeah. And they got everybody out with like about a minute to spare, Well,
according to
knew a guy on that plane. I knew a guy on the plane. I've known him ever since he was a kid.
Yeah.
And it was like skin and teeth, but they got out. So for an aircraft like this to flip on its back and to ignite in flames, and for the crew to start trying to put out the flames internally, and the ground crew being able to do its thing quickly and textbook, that saved everybody's life.
Yeah, air traffic controllers notified the pilots of 38 mile per hour wind gusts, but that's not exceptional. They've they test fly these planes at 100 kilometer an hour wind gusts.
Yeah, there might have been something unusual, a wind shear or of some kind, some unusual thing that happened. It could have been pilot error, but like I said, the plane's routes were all in wintry areas, so the pilots must have been trained. to deal with
it
that.
came from Minneapolis, St. Paul, and it's a Delta Airlines flight. Although you can't necessarily say that, just because it came from Minneapolis that the pilots were based out of Minneapolis, because many of the pilots do like circular runs. They go on big tours of North America, right?
Well, usually a plane route has fixed pilots. They do the same thing over and over and over again. They like the ones that go back and forth to London or Paris, right? It's usually the same crew.
Okay, that's okay. That's okay. Well, that's not the way they do it in Britain. It's interesting because they actually rotate the crews around the place in Britain. They don't fly a fixed route.
Well, they might for a while in order to get used to it, and then
no, they actually, it's not part of the way that they do things on British Airways. That's why I assumed that they don't here.
Oh, well, anyway, I think here that you pick up a route. I knew a Air Canada pilot, right?
Yeah.
So, and he was doing the same route for a long time. So, but anyway, they're supposed to be trained for the environment they're in, and I think probably this is just an anomaly, and we'll figure it out. Maybe it is pilot error. Maybe it was just a certain set.
I'm not sure as to what causes. Yeah. It's like putting an SUV over. The only way you put an SUV over is normally you turn unexpectedly. In something like snow, you turn unexpectedly, right?
Yeah, we don't know here. It may be a problem with the runway. May not have been. It was probably an icy runway. He may have come down slightly, not exactly straight. That's a possibility. His landing, there something wrong with the landing gear. Any number of things.
Oh, we don't know for sure until they've done a full thing, investigation on this. But for about a couple of years, I used to work at Heathrow Airport, so I met a lot of people like flight engineers and that sort of thing over the time there.
What was Betty's? Also, Mike said, Betty said, welcome some of her. Do you know what that means? Watch some of it. Oh, I see. Oh, yeah. When I heard that, yeah. Hey, Cushman says, I don't know Greens were the only ones that did costing.
I think that's on must be on another subject.
Okay.
Yeah.
Crooked buggers government. Wow. I think they're having more of a conversation than we are. We're still stuck on something
gold hassle. Okay.
Oh, you mean the gold heist? The gold heist?
Gold heist. Okay, from ages ago. That was ages ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it's still unsolved. The Blizzard one.
Yeah, well, planes run all the time, Betty. They've got more kit in Pearson than we know what to do with, right? They've got more kit to put planes down in Pearson than we even know what to do with, right?
Yeah, and they got spare airplanes. I remember the first time I flew over the Atlantic. We was going to London, and we had booked for BOAC, which was British Airways, the old name, BOAC, British Overseas Air Service, or whatever it was, and now Air Corporation, and then
something like that.
There something was wrong with their planes, so they had to get an old Air Canada plane out of storage, and it had like paint peeling off it inside, like it was meant for refurbishing. And the inside hadn't been done, but the engines and all that had been done apparently, so that it was safe. Because we got into a plane and looked like, oh man, like it needed some work, And
but I bet that flew back empty.
No, it wouldn't have, because it would have picked up the the whatever, but we landed in the morning, so it probably flew back with a full complement of people.
No, they would have actually, funnily enough, if you're flying into Heathrow and you're flying into a British Airways landing zone and you're flying with a spare plane, that spare plane gets taken out of service.
Well,
they put a new plane on.
But this is 1973, so you can't really tell.
It's a different era. Different era.
And anyway. And when I was on a plane and it hit a hailstorm and got ripped to pieces when I was in Tripoli, it was thankfully we were able to land, but the plane took a brutal beating. For 3 months after that, the French airline that I was on at that time just rented a TriStar, a Euro. It was a Euro Air Euro or something like that, TriStar. So they replaced their DC-10 with a TriStar, and they flew with that for a while. So they rented one basically.
Yeah. Okay. Betty says the reason she don't like flying 3 days by car to get home. Actually, mile for mile, it is still the safest way to travel.
Yeah, you're quite right about that. I mean, all the regulations and everything like that, and there's been less and less air problems. That one that happened in Washington was obviously, it looks as if it was the helicopter's fault, but we'll find out.
Yeah, again, yeah. Okay, the other thing is about that flight, the 1987 in Denver that flipped on its lid, right? 16 people died. This is how we've advanced in aviation. We've advanced so much in aviation that that you don't have deaths in this situation. Unless somebody hadn't been putting their belt on, that's the only likelihood there would have been a death.
Yeah. But there were a couple injured very badly, so we'll have to find out what happened to them. They had to be airlifted out, including a child, unfortunately. So it probably got thrown around in there like a piece of salt in a shaker, because
maybe they had their belts on loose.
The little kid, and who knows? Oh well.
Yeah.
Anyway, unfortunate. There were some. Hopefully, that their injuries, they recover from them.
Yeah.
No, we can only hope.
No fatalities as yet, but there are some serious injuries. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. The hospital was just saying that that the icy conditions could leading to a surge of broken bones. So be careful out there. Right.
Yeah, I guess this happens every year, but in this particular case, because of the kind of snow ice that we've been having lately, there's a huge surge in broken bones.
Yeah. Well, when you look at what we've had a combination of snow that's still around, but it's been around for weeks. It's compacted down to become ice. Then we had snow on top of that. Then we had ice on top of that. Then we had
freezing rain. We had freezing rain.
Yeah, we had the freezing rain, which turns to ice, of course, overnight when on the ground. And then we had snow on top of that, and then freezing rain on top of that. So we've had the worst possible conditions. And when I cleared
lots of opportunities for broken bones,
lots of opportunities. And one of the worst things that I heard about is a friend of mine. Actually, what happened is he's getting into his car. He put his right leg into the driver's area, and his left leg went underneath the car. He was there for half an hour. Right? Yeah. Because he couldn't find his phone, because he put it in the back seat of the car with his thing, and he was trapped under there.
Oh boy.
And it was only a passing person that actually got him out.
Oh man, I wish I was that passing person, because I could have made myself a quick 20 right there. Yeah, I see your predicament, pal, but let me see your wallet, and we might do something about this.
Yeah, no, this was good few years ago. So he was living in quite a, quite a quiet cul-de-sac, which is nice when you're living in the quiet cul-de-sac, but not so nice if you're falling under your car.
Well, this is something we just talked about, the broken bones and all that, and the way that our health system's going. I half expect to see somebody with a broken leg coming out of the Niagara Falls General with a splint made out of a hockey stick. Because and what was confirmed to me, my mother got a new doctor, and I was talking to her, and one thing led to the next. We just talked about a few problems we'd had with the healthcare system, and then she just looked me right now and said, well, that's because this healthcare system is utterly broken. Not just a little broken, really broken.
Really broken.
When she heard the tales, a few tales, she says, oh yeah, and she had a couple of her own, being a doctor and relatives of hers, and being treated poorly or diagnosed poorly in the hospital and stuff. She says the health system is broken. It's not working very well. So there you have it, a confirmation from someone who would know. And she had no qualms about telling us that either, because of her own frustrations. So when you do go and get a broken bone at Niagara General, don't be surprised if you walk out there with a splint made out of a hockey stick.
That's a bad dream, Dave. Yeah. It's a bad dream. Yeah. Okay, so we got some more comments upon this.
Hospital icy conditions lead to surge in broken bones. Yeah, this has happened though. Like I said before, it's a common thing that happens, but this year it's more than usual.
All right, look back at the ice ages here. Wow, amazing! How your province came back. Lots of broken bones. Yeah. Took 32 hours to chip all the ice away the other day. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, 2 hours. He said 32 hours. It was 2 hours, right?
Well, I have to say, when I first read that, I thought, man, Mike's a dedicated guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. There was like 125 older people with broken hips. Yeah, it's what I fear going out right now. Watch people on the path try to get shopping. One older couple went down. I see. All right. Emergency room at Niagara General Hospital this week was worse than the worst I've seen in the poorest places in the world. Urine, drugs, abuse, language barriers, and no staff. Yeah. Unfortunately, of course, if we have trouble getting in and out of places, they have trouble getting in and out of places as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, yeah, and in the NHS's or the Niagara Health System's infinite wisdom, they probably gave everybody Tuesday off.
Probably.
You can't get hurt on a Tuesday. Anyways, long weekends. Oh my God! Don't like. I was in the hospital long weekend. It was 8 hours.
Yeah.
8 hours.
Well, long weekends always tend to have more incidents, right? I don't, and not saying drunk driving incidents or drunkenness incidents. I'm just saying they have incidents, right? People, I guess it's because of people getting out and doing, doing handiwork and doing other things. Not that you'd be doing much in the way of handiwork on this weekend.
Yeah. Well,
somebody said frozen kids in cars. I've not heard that one.
I haven't heard that one yet.
No, I haven't seen anything about that. I'll be on the lookout for that one though. Okay, so one thing to realize, and it's an interesting one. There's no such thing as Canadian or American cars, say experts. Yeah, they need to tell Donald Trump that, and that's true
He
with a
doesn't
number of
care.
products.
He
That's
doesn't
true.
care. He knows it anyway.
Yeah.
The biggest problem for car manufacturers right now is they all aligned their policies with the USMCA. They aligned their policies and their trade agreements to configure with Donald Trump's USMCA tariff regulations. It was him that brought it up, and it was him that instituted it. It was him that told the whole world it was probably the best trade agreement ever. And now he's trying to make reasons that doesn't happen, and putting tariffs on. Now, I was listening to, I think it was the CEO for Ford.
Yeah.
And he said he's better aligned than the other so-called domestic automakers like Chrysler and or whatever it's called now, Chrysler and
General Motors.
And General Motors, because they consciously tried to get as many parts that they could be made in the United States, so their cars can be up to 80% parts made in the United States. But if you look at any particular car and look at it and said, okay, this is Canadian made. So, okay, maybe the steel came from Canada, maybe a bunch of other things came, and maybe it was assembled in Canada.
Yeah.
But
the only real mark
may have come from the States. The coolant pump may have come from Mexico.
Yeah. Well, the only mark of it being made in Canada or made in America is actually where the final car was assembled. But as you say, a water pump comes from Mexico, the engine comes from Canada, the speedo comes from France, and the back seat came from South Africa, or something like that, right?
I looked at my glove compartment. I couldn't find any speedo. I just imagine where they put it.
Speedometer. Okay, speedometer.
I can't tell you the reaction I got when I phoned the car lot. Hey, where's my speedo?
I'm obviously using a word that nobody uses here. Speedometer.
Now
we shorten the word to speedo.
Now the conversation got a lot less exciting for me.
But anyway, you know what I'm saying is you don't know where a car, car parts come from all over the world, including China.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Right. You just simply don't know where your car. Where the final bit is assembled. You could ask, if you went into Ford and you said to, Brock Ford, you said, hey, Mr. Salesman, where is the car made? Can I get a Canadian made car? And they may or may not be able to help you.
Well, the car I'm driving now is made in Canada. It's a RAV4 made in Cambridge.
Yeah.
I was there when they were working at that plant when they were just beginning to make them.
Yeah.
And but that only assures that like 51% of the cost of that car comes from Canada, including labor.
Yeah.
So to say that it's a Canadian car is really kind of a misnomer. It's got wheels that come from somewhere.
Yeah.
Water pumps.
You don't know where the parts come from.
No.
And when you change a part, you can't guarantee it's Canadian.
No, it's impossible.
Yeah.
Impossible.
And, you need a new oil pump. You don't know where it came from.
Yeah. Well, like I was in a shop one time and the lady was saying when the parts were put in, she said, "Did you put in genuine GM parts, not aftermarket?" And he said, "Yeah." And he says it really doesn't matter because it's a genuine GM part, but it says made in Mexico on it, and that's where they come from, right?
Yeah.
Something like that,
Yeah. Oh, exactly. But you see, a genuine GM part doesn't necessarily come out of a GM plant. It may have been made in a, in a Chinese plant that makes all similar type plants, similar type products for all cars of a particular kind.
Well, they may contract that part out of it. Now, what the Ford CEO said that they are better aligned for America First kind of stuff because they've consciously tried to get as many sources within the United States. But he basically said that they aligned, all the different car companies have aligned with the USMCA, and that's what's throwing them.
Yeah.
They adjusted all their manufacturing stuff to align with the USMCA, all the rules and regulations with Donald Trump's free trade deal, and now he's throwing a monkey wrench into that, which will precipitate costs one way or another. And but we don't know what's going on because Trump is a trollster as much as he is an initiator. So we'll see.
Yeah. Okay. A pair of people work from Thorold have been arrested after a Niagara Falls business reported finding drugs, including a kilogram of fentanyl hidden in the ceiling tiles of its bathroom.
A kilogram of fentanyl, like, it must have been already cut, because a kilogram of fentanyl could kill a massive amount of people. In fact, just handling it, if it's in its raw form, you could get overdose. It just goes right through your skin. So it must have been cut. It must have been cut. It must have been cut for the street.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to pure fentanyl, only a kilogram has been found going from Canada to the United States, according to U.S. Officials. So only 1 kilogram of fentanyl. So if they have a kilogram of fentanyl here in ceiling tiles, that's already that must be fentanyl cut for the streets, because it would be poison in the state.
But it looks so. It looks to me like what they're doing is using the bathroom as a kind of distribution point.
Yeah, it seems that way, and probably some janitor or something had to clean the tiles, like part of what his job was, and found the stash.
Yeah.
So
possibly saw a tile dislodged or something.
Yeah. Well, what happened? We don't know how it was discovered. But we do know it was discovered. And that just goes to show you that, I think this is probably a mid-level dealer, and that was one of his or her distribution points, or supply points. But they've arrested a few people. But there you go. Fentanyl is rearing its ugly head right here. That's no surprise to us. And I suppose one of the favors that Trump has given us is he's forced us to jump on fentanyl harder than we had before. That's probably a very good thing, although it wasn't really that far out of control. One of the main problems with Canada and fentanyl is the cartels have found it easier to launder their money up here. So Canada's role in the illegal fentanyl trade, might have a lot more to do with than the product. It might have a lot to do with how they launder their ill-gotten gains.
Yeah, more likely, yeah, because we actually have, the banking here is well known and well reputed.
Yeah.
And unlike HSBC in America, not known for actually laundering cartel money.
Oh, that's sarcastic, of course. Yeah, HSBC has been fined twice for laundering terrorist and narco dollars.
Yeah,
every bank seems to have
some of the biggest fines ever in a bank were levied against HSBC in America.
Yeah, and if you look at the fines, they are like $300 million or something. They look big, but the profits that the bank made using terrorist and narco dollars was like $1 billion. So it still pays them to do it. They just have to hide it better, which they did.
And the
They
work,
get hit twice. So the first time they just kind of refined it and didn't refine it enough. And we don't know. The UN has complained about this a lot with major banks kind of looking the other way during cash flow problems,
Yeah. And the thing about this is that there's a belief, although they can't prove it, according to one documentary I was watching about this, I've seen 2 or 3 about this, because I used to have an HSBC bank account in the UK. Right. So I'm curious, of course.
Okay, brother. Some of that interest you were making on that your savings account there is drug money.
Interest that you make 0.0001%, you mean?
You're complicit nonetheless.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it just is, so basically, yeah, the biggest fines ever for a bank. And also they think that this went right the way to the top, ownership of HSBC in Hong Kong and London.
And right down to the bottom investors like you. They throw you in jail.
I had nothing to do with it. Don't know anything about it.
Oh, yeah. That's what HSBC's top brass said, too. What? Narco dollars? Oh, my goodness. How did that happen?
Okay. Okay. So, according to Liberal and NDP politicians or candidates, there's too much hate towards immigrants and refugees in Niagara Falls. Say our local Liberal and NDP candidates. So Wayne Gates, etc. I'd have to say that I've been noticing this of late myself.
Well,
I don't, this statement that starts, I don't need to be racist, but.
Yeah. Well, seriously, but I'm telling you, I was kind of disappointed in this because, of course, you're going to get a reaction. Like in our particular town, where the federal government pays about $100 million in a year to take care of refugees that sit in our hotels, and we have homeless people that some of us are related to, and that contrast, of course, that's going to cause some bitterness somewhere along the line.
Oh yeah,
and also when we have too many. When the government's policies have brought in too many people that overburden the healthcare system, of course, we're going to be a little bit embittered, not just towards the government. Some people are going to take that another way. It says, could you stay at home? You don't belong here because we got too many of you anyway, and then particularly if you sit in the hospital for 8 hours and you watch the new Canadians get in there before you, even if they were in line ahead of you, you start thinking to yourself, if they weren't here, I might get better quality service. And when the housing boom broke, or and housing and rentals went through the roof, the Canadian government admitted that its pathetic immigration policies were a big part of that. Yeah. So, of course, there's another nudge in that way. But I don't think overall, aside from these things that trigger people, that's the case at all. I don't myself find it. We have a culture, and our culture is being overburdened by people from other parts of the world. We're used to that, but in the volumes that we have had, you're going to expect a reaction. So I was a little bit disappointed in that they would start that way, that they would start, oh, there's lots of hate here, a lot of hate. No, I wanted to hear about the real issues. How are you going to improve that healthcare system? How are you going to improve the economy of this area? If you do those things, other things will take care of themselves. And Scott
McEachran is saying the use of hotels for housing is troublesome to tourism. On a cross-country trip last summer, it was difficult to find a hotel that had capacity. Yeah.
There you go.
There is a problem. And you know, in what Scott is saying, there's not a hint there of racism at all, right? It's just a fact of life. But I can understand why that might lead to people being racist.
Yeah, you would have the same resentment if those hotels were full of white people or Asian people. You know what I mean? If the hotels were full of Ukrainians and they were getting they're getting a free ride-free card from the federal government, you would have a certain amount of resentment. But on the other hand, the Ukrainian culture is probably more similar to our own, and it wouldn't be that egregious. But when you see a bunch of people with a different culture and a different way of doing things, and of course that just becomes glaring. So how are you going to fix it, Mr. Gates? And how are you going to fix it? What are you going to do about that? And to say something like that, to elevate eyebrows like that, without kind of explaining why it happened and how you're going to diffuse something like that, it's just rubbish, right?
Well,
you want something like this racist idea that it all of a sudden is blowing out of is okay. Bring attention to it, but tell us why.
Yeah.
Tell us why. Tell us why that's happening.
Yeah. So Scott was saying he had to go a detour of 200 kilometers just to get a room at one point. Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
And and so Scott may not have had any kind of resentment towards the people who were filling up the hotels.
I don't believe he would. He's not that kind of person.
No, but other people might. You know, other people might. And
exactly. And that's problematic. It's problematic for for our community. But again, what you said a few moments ago, I would say is important. So, Mr. Gates, what are you going to do about it?
I want to know why he thinks it's happening. Why is there this spate of racism, so he claims, and hatred towards other cultures? Why do you think that's happening? Let's get down to the bottom tax. Where is it? Everyone thinks that Canadians should be perfect and all of a sudden just accept everybody that comes from all over the world. People are people.
Yeah.
And when they perceive a large amount of people coming into the country as being detrimental to the economy, detrimental to housing, detrimental to the healthcare system, what do you think is going to happen? So tell me, where is the source of this? How does it start? Yeah. And don't give me any kind of vague ideas of racism. These kind of things have causal effects. What are the causal effects? Is it overburden of healthcare system that makes people resent them? Is it the high price of rents that tell me why? Tell me why you think that's happening. And then tell me how you're going to fix it.
Yeah. And Betty is saying she walks into if you're in a chat room, it's either Color or Trump seem to be the most popular opinions out there. By the way, I've got to leave bang on 8 o'clock this morning, Dave.
Yeah.
Okay. Just to let you know.
I just like to wrap up the subject by saying, I haven't got a prejudiced bone in my body, but those people really need to.
Those people, yes, those people. Yeah. Yeah. No, and the issue is I accept there is a big issue there. But part of the issue has also been that federally we've been allowing too many people in while we've not been in a good situation. While Canada's not been in a good situation.
Our economy is tanking.
Yeah.
Wages for the average person have either become stagnant or actually going down. And our government had a policy, ill-advised policy, to grow immigration by exorbitant amounts. Polyev was right about the fact that immigration worked very well up until Trudeau, and then Trudeau decided to explode it.
Yeah.
And without thought, because of course they didn't think about housing. They didn't think about what it was going to do to the healthcare
Right.
system.
And Scott says, no hatred, the opposite, concern. How can the people housed in hotels organize their life? Families of many trying to function from a small hotel room. Yeah, it's not going to happen. You can't. How can you give that as an address for a job or a bank account?
Yeah, and well, they have, and then about the best they can do is help people to start doing volunteer work around the community. But that's not getting them a job, is it? I mean, it's sort of introducing them to the community. And when I was doing some community work recently, the volunteers were coming from these sources where new refugees were being asked to participate, and they wouldn't show up sometimes. That was an issue with them. They were meant to show up at a certain place, and then they and do a certain volunteer thing, but they wouldn't show up. Some would, some wouldn't. So basically, I don't know. And then but this is a good place for, I guess, a lot of refugees, because there's a lot of jobs, a lot of tourist jobs but they don't pay very well. But they can get their foot in the door probably by beginning to earn. But then later on, what's that going to do? They're not going to be able to afford their own homes or apartments. They still have to be supported in some way. So when all these things happen, when everybody's bank book or stressed out, when 40, like I think what was it? Welland last week we talked about the region where 40% of the people in apartments are having difficulty keeping them, and then when you look across the street, you're struggling to get a job, and you're struggling to put food on the table, and your car's broken because you can't afford it. And then you watch a refugee walk into a hotel, it's brand new clothes, brand new cell phone, and food paid for, lodgings paid for. You think you're not going to have a little bit of resentment, right? That happens, right?
Becky is saying, what bugs me is they come in, they get their license to drive. I'm a Canadian with a license, but not allowed to drive in Ontario. 17 years now, but my right was taken away.
Oh,
well, you should. Yeah, you should go see. I don't know how.
Well, I don't personally. I don't care if any of them drive, as long as they pass the test. That's all I care about.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Moving on. WestJet sees a 25% reduction in passengers flying to the US over the last few weeks. All right. So, been since the beginning of the year, trade has been dropping off. People not flying south.
Well, there's a twofold reason there. There's the troller Trump reason, Trump the troller reason, and the other reason is money. How far can your money go? So you're thinking, well, I was going to go to Florida, but I think I'll go to Mexico instead, or maybe the islands, because I can get a better deal going down there. My dollar will go a little bit further. So that's a big deal. Like the Canadian dollar is in a pathetic situation right now.
Yeah.
But if you put the two together, if you put this sort of I got to do something, maybe I could do something, plus the poor Canadian dollar. If you put them together, that makes the ingredient to say, okay, well, I'm not going to go into the States this time. I'll go somewhere else for my trip. And and right now, also, if you go to, for instance, I was looking at a report, CBC or maybe CTV, about duty-free shops near the BC border in the U.S., where their trade is down up to 80% because Canadians aren't going back and forth nearly as much as they used to. But that was a sudden drop. So that had more to do with Trump's trolling, because it was a sudden change, not a gradual one. So
yeah, but again, there's actually our position with our dollar, the differentiation on our dollar, we're worth 62 cents, isn't it, at the moment?
62 cents. I don't know. All I know is like if you have $100 Canadian, or if you buy $100 US, you have to pay $145 Canadian to get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's insane. So your dollar's only less worth than only 2/3 of what the US dollar is. That's pathetic.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And the Canadian dollar's never been in such a bad position.
And it's been many years since it's been that bad, and it's going to get worse, unfortunately. I believe
likely to get worse. Yeah, absolutely, it's likely to get worse, and that, of course, is one of the reasons you'll see a drop in people flying to the US. Conversely, for Americans coming north, there's probably not a better time for actual great deals right now.
Yeah. So if the Americans were smart, they'd come up here because their dollar's going to go a long, long way up here.
Yeah.
Oh, and so the Yankee greenback's going to do well up here.
Well, mind you, what they have to remember to do, our American friends, is when you come to Canada, you don't spend your US dollars, you convert it to Canadian, because that's how you'll make the savings.
Well, a lot of shops will probably take US currency.
Oh, a lot of shops will take US currency, but many will take them at par.
No.
Well, they used to years ago.
Well,
many of the ones put them this way, many of the ones down in our tourist area take them at par.
No,
they don't. They're not supposed to, but they do.
No, they don't. No American's gonna say, okay, it's gonna cost me $20 to get into this wax museum, and I give you $20 US. No. I know what this thing is worth.
Look, yeah, convert it anyway. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
Convert your money.
I've got a US money. You've got Canadian money. Look, I'll go into your wax museum. That's $20 Canadian. That's $1 US version.
Yeah, it's about the shape of it, right?
Yeah, citizens want to play hardball, but buy this or that from the US, but end up having two. It's a joke. Yeah, it's pretty hard to, like, just buying Canadian and all things is going to be really, really difficult for mostly our day-to-day little items like pencils, papers, whatever. Well, not paper, but cheap sunglasses, mugs, phones. They all come from not Canada, and but they don't have a whole lot of U.S. content in them either.
Yeah,
so I don't know what how best to do that, but to shut off tourism is a big deal. I guess Kentucky and Tennessee, even though they're taking a beating right now with flooding, but before that happened, they were worried about their own tourist industry that had been burgeoning, and they, especially around Memphis and stuff like that, they had a lot of Canadians come down, but they've canceled 1/3 of all packages have been canceled down to Memphis. So when if this trade war continues, farmers are going to get hurt bad. These are the source of Trump's support. So farmers and tourist areas and places like Kentucky, Florida, Tennessee, and the Farm Belt, they're all going to get hurt. And those are red states.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Someone ought to tap Trump on the shoulder and say, look, they could go over to those red states, especially the swing states, could go over to the Dems during the midterms, and then you'll be stuck with not so many sycophants in the Congress.
Okay. Betty points out an important thing. Hardly anything is made in Canada these days.
Yeah, not even hockey sticks. They come from Europe.
Yeah, that's ironic. When nobody plays hockey in Europe, except for Finland.
Well, Finland and Sweden, good hockey players.
Coho has been around. I'm being cynical, of course. I'm being cynical, of course. Yeah.
Well, Finland, Sweden, the Czech Republic, they got great hockey players there. Whoa.
I know
Excellent.
they do. I know. And the Russians, of course.
Yeah. Well, I made the mistake. I was in Gatwick Airway one time, and there's a young lad there with a hockey stick and his hockey equipment. And I went over and talked to him. I just assumed that he was a Yank or a
A Canadian.
Canadian. So I says, "Hey, where are you from, buddy?" You know, he's got his hat turned around, and he's got modern. He's got a hockey stick and a bag. It looks like any kid at the Gale Center, right?
Yeah.
So I started talking to him. But it turns out he was German. Couldn't talk back to me.
German, and he didn't speak English.
No, he didn't speak English.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Not many Germans don't speak. Most Germans do speak English.
Yeah,
it's weird. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Well, I guess maybe it's because they don't make as many war movies as they do, so they can't get jobs in the film industry going, "Und I will shoot you."
I don't know. Yeah. All right. Okay. So, all right. So tariff threats are already driving investment out of Canada. That's the other impact, of course, here.
Well, this is unfortunately it's a double downer for us because our productivity was absolutely
very low. We've been talking about that for quite some time, haven't we?
Yeah. So it's a double stake in the heart, basically, because our productivity was very low, and the Canadian investment community was loath to invest in Canadian industry because our productivity was low, and government policies and regulations inhibited a bunch of things, and so that kind of staved off companies from reinvesting in themselves, and above all, new investment coming into the country. But now with these tariff threats, even if they don't go through, companies are rattled. Well, why would we want to invest in Canada? This thing could all happen at any time. Tariffs could come in, ruin our prospects. So instead of investing in a aluminum smelter in Quebec, let's invest in one somewhere in the United States. They might want to go to Australia to invest in an aluminum smelter or a steel mill if they don't have the tariffs. But basically the tariff thing, it's working for Trump in a way. It's steering investment back into the country. He's saying you're safe from tariffs if you make your stuff here. So it's already working. And the article says that we've been here before. The Americans have tried to economically overcome us in a number of times during the last century. In the 19th century, they had trade levies and economic pressures on Canada to try to force it to become part of the United States. And it didn't work in the 2 or 3 times they did try it. And what happened in this particular case, Canada got stronger and found reasons and abilities to survive. There's a lot, in Canada right now, there are a lot of American wannabes. Like when you hear about Canadians not liking the U.S., that may be part of the population, but a big other part of the population are American wannabes. They watch American television and they're star-spangled, they're gays, they just love all that glitter and stuff. And so they're American wannabes, like, oh yeah, this is our opportunity.
And a lot of those people are ones who are saying, yeah, let's be the 51st state.
Sure, because they've always wanted to be Americans, but the Americans wouldn't allow them to be Americans because they'd have to cross over the border and prove a reason why they want to immigrate to the U.S. So none of them have done it. So Trump will do it for us. The magnitude of that is unbelievable. And yeah, it would take a long time in order to force Canada to become a 51st state. I'm more concerned of them chipping away, like making a huge carve out for Alberta, let's say. I'll put tariffs on everything except what comes from Alberta.
Yeah.
Right. And guess what? We're even giving you a few tax breaks and stuff like that. come on and join us, you know. And when people start feeling the pinches in their pocket, they might say, well, I don't want to, but do we have any choice?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But that'll take a while to do. And unfortunately for us, the last 9 years under the Liberals have paid too little attention to the economy and growing the economy, and swelled our ranks with immigrants that we can't accommodate. Not that we don't need them, but we can't accommodate in those numbers, and which has all put extraordinarily strains on our housing, on our healthcare, our productivity, that kind of thing. So
you see, the problem with productivity, the lows we've had with productivity that have been going on for what, somewhere near 10 years. We've had situations whereby, what was it, Nortel Communications essentially collapsed because of their failure to invest in new products, new technologies, new, whatever. And the same with once world leading BlackBerry. Again, a failure to invest in the new, a failure to become part of the new, smartphone order.
well, that happened to other companies too, like Kodak.
Yeah.
They
Oh,
really
I know.
they really could not understand what the market forces were.
It's happened with a lot of companies, yes. But we happen to have had two very big companies here in Canada, in Ontario, that have lost a lot of jobs. And we've had, a crisis of investment ever since.
Yeah, that's all true. But what are you going to do about it? There's, I don't know, those industries have gone us away now, and basically we got to really zero in on the economy, and there are real problems with what the regulations that we're bringing onto our companies that you don't find in the United States, and things like that. So if you're an investor and you see all these, say you want to invest in an oil field, and you see all these regulations and carbon taxes and everything north of the border, but you don't find them south of the border, and I've got $1 million to invest, and I'm unsure about the return in Alberta, so I'll go to a Montana oil field and invest there.
Yeah, absolutely. I get it. And if you've got $1 million to invest, you're going to invest it more easily south of the border than you will up here. And
that
is probably what the tariff threat's all about, in actually to divert investment away from Canada and Mexico.
Well, it's working, and it's going to be a long haul, I'm sure. But anyway,
so I got to get going.
Yeah. All right. Without further ado, I bid you adieu.
And we'll pick this up tomorrow.
Pray for peace. It's a tenuous thing.